Okay, hi there everyone. How are you? Okay, who've we got? Right, first of all, can you hear me? That'd be a good place to start. Okay, let me just check down the bottom. Let's check. How is everyone? Yes. Okay, thank you, Maggie. Looks like you can all hear me. That's brilliant. So I can go back to the top and see who's joined us and say hello. Hi, Suzette. Hi, Karen. Hi, Dawn. Who else have we got? Hazel. Hello, Hazel. Hi, Elaine. Good evening. Oh, it's 11:30 Wednesday night. Oh, you're in South Australia. Oh, wow. Hello, Elaine. Lovely to have you here. I don't think I've had you on one of my lives before because usually I do 2:00 and that would make it well past midnight for you. So, yeah, I've managed to sneak in just a little bit earlier today. Hi, Donna. Hi, Debbie and Jill and Jean and Tina. Hi, Jackie. Oh, thanks, Dawn. It's good to know. The picture's good and you can hear me fine. Who else do we have? Karen as well. Karen, you're in Germany, do I believe? Am I thinking of the right Karen there? And we've got Debbie Jade's Crafting Corner from Orlando. Oh, so it's 9:00 in the morning for you there. So you're just starting your day with us. Janet, oh, you're in the middle of decorating. Oh, yeah. Always seems like a good idea, doesn't it, when you start? And then you get a little bit halfway through and you think, it doesn't seem such a good plan after all. But it'll all be worth it at the end, Janet. I'm sure it'll look brilliant and you'll be so pleased that you'll come to the end of it and you'll finish there. But yes, have a little break for an hour or so. Yes, Elaine. Yeah, I thought it was your first time with this. I didn't recognise that name here before. And Karen, you are indeed from Germany. That's perfect. Hi, Marion. Hi, Evelyn. Thanks so much for joining me today. A little bit out of sorts, aren't we? Because I'm usually with you on a Tuesday. But yeah, so thanks so much for understanding all your lovely comments from yesterday. Unfortunately, when I get a migraine, I can't feel them coming on because I always wake up with them. I always wake up first thing in the morning. So if I'm going to have one, it's either sort of first thing in the morning or not. And then it just floors me for the rest of the day. And I just wasn't able to do very much at all. So it wouldn't have been fair on you. I would have been completely incohesive. So I rescheduled it for today. So my Wednesday is now looking very different to what it usually does because I've juggled other things around. So now I'm going to be confused for the rest of the week, thinking it's either Tuesday or I do a live on a Thursday, don't I? So yeah. But it's nice to be with you today. I've got a lovely antidote to yesterday. So I'm going to make a really lovely card with this brand new collection that Lisa, or one of the collections that Lisa is bringing to you on a one-day special tomorrow, which is Thursday, isn't it? Yes. So yeah, I'm using the Zinnia Collection and I'm going to make a really bright spring feel-good card. Now, what I've done to start with, I've made this card. And this is basically the same concept as what I'm going to be making for you, but this one I've done completely tonal with no inking. It's purely die cutting and embossing. So the next one I will do, I'll be using exactly the same techniques as I did to create this, but it'll be far more colourful. So hence all the inks that are sitting there. So, I mean, it's really a very straightforward card, to be honest with you. What I've done, I've used a lovely pearlized pink little baby pink card that I had in my craft stock actually, and I've used just the die and the embossing folder from this brand new collection, and I've rearranged them around a cut aperture. just to create a background. So it's a really textural background, and what it in effect has done is made it look like a background embossing folder, actually, just by die cutting, because you only get the one die. This collection is an A6 collection here, so the embossing folder is one of the really small ones, nice little dinky one, as I like to say. But they're really cute, really, really useful. It is the single stem flower, but you can do so much with it. So you get the embossing folder and you get the die as well. So it is just a single die for a single stem flower. Let me just put that back in there so I don't lose it. And all I've done really just for this one is die cut perhaps 5 or 6 of these stems. I embossed them all, and I didn't need to do anything else because I'm using a pearlized card. The beauty of the pearlized card really comes out when you emboss it. And I've just rearranged it around an oval die cut aperture. Now, I've used an oval one because I thought it would work really well, but you can use whichever shape aperture you like. It really isn't exclusive to the oval, and this is why this time around I won't be giving any dimensions to the cards, because it's really going to be up to you and what card blanks you have in stock, because you'd be able to adapt it to a square card with a square aperture, a square card with a circle aperture. So yeah, you'll see what I mean once we get going with it. But I thought that was just a really nice elegant wedding card, and all I've used in the centre there is the brand new mini sentiments and just stamped them, literally stamped straight onto the cardstock through the aperture there. So I'll just show you quickly what it is I'm using. It's not a huge amount of products today, I must admit, because I really wanted these brand new this brand new collection to really shine. So it's the Zinnia Collection. As always, we have the layering stencils. Now, this set comes with 5 layering stencils in the A6 size as well. So these are the same size as the embossing folder, as you can see here. So for anyone who likes to make the smaller cards, which are really nice, quick and easy makes to have as a stash of cards for when you really need them, these C6 ones are, or A6 ones, are absolutely perfect for that. And then, of course, we've got the 3D embossing folder with the die that goes with. Okay, let me put all these back together so I know where they are. My brain is still a little confuzzled, so I'm quite likely to lose something and not know where it is. Okay, so the dies that I've used to create the aperture in here, for this one, it's the bubble ovals, the nested stitched bubble ovals. It's a lovely die set. Comes in small packaging purely because of the nature of the shape of the dies, and Lisa was able to be really economical with the packaging. The dies themselves are large, the same size as, well, not the same size, but they're in comparatively the same size to the rectangles and the squares that we have. So although it's the small packaging, this time around for the ovals, you are still getting an awful lot of product, an awful lot of sort of metal for your money there. So don't be fooled by small packages. As they say, all good things come in small packages. And then the next thing I used, actually I didn't use this set for this card, I used this one. But it's basically the same. I'm going to change the sentiment for the card that I'm making for you now. But it's basically the mini sentiments, the newest of the sentiment stamps to Lisa's collection, and so useful. Some of you may have already got the ones that you got on Lisa's pick last week on the website. It's changed this week now. It changed on Monday to another fabulous offer with the it was the Petal Flourish layering stencil, and you get the set of stencil washes with it for a price of £30.98, and also as a bonus you get the 3D embossing folder to go with those layering stencils. So that's this week's pick. I don't have that set, so that's why I'm not using it, but this was last week's pick. So I've used this set, the happy set, on this card, and the set I'm using here will be the U. You've still got happy birthday on there, you've just got a different highlighted word perfect set to use and mix and match to make your sentiments. So you can see on the side there the products I was using. So let's see, we've got Katie with, oh Katie, sorry, I hope you're okay there. Oh, perhaps sit down with a cup of tea now and relax a little bit for the next hour. So I'm going to make a really nice bright card, real nice feel good card, because I needed cheering up today as well, and I'm so sick of the grey weather outside and the rain that, yeah, let's bring a bit of spring inside, shall we? So I've just changed the details there to show you the colours that I'm using. Now what I've done this time around with the colours, you'll see in a second when I put the card together, what I've done, I'm putting 3 colours of flowers on, and I've just paired up those colours to give you an idea of what I used to blend the colours. Now, I'm going to ask you in a second what colour you want me to blend the flowers into. Now, what I've done, that's the purple flower, that's the pink one, and this is the yellow one, and they're all going on the card, but I will stencil one of these for you. And just while I'm chatting, perhaps you can let me know what your preference is. Would you like me to do either a pink or a yellow? I can do purple actually, but I do have 2 purple flowers. So, but I do whatever colour combination you want me to do. So this, but I wanted to use different colours today just to give you a nice reference point if you were struggling to pick your colours for shading. So it's really nice to see them in action and see them already be done if you are a little bit unsure in picking the colours yourself. So this pink flower has been stenciled with Sugar Candy and Loganberry. So this is from set 1 and this is from set 3. So this pink flower is with those 2 colours. Should I do that there? There we are. If that's a help. Now the purple, I wanted to add a little bit of nice dimension to the purple. So the purple, I've actually used Sweet Violet, which is from collection 2, and the Loganberry. So using the Loganberry in the both flowers, it means that there is some similarity. They've got something in common, which means that they'll blend really nicely when they're sitting on a card together. So, and maybe you wouldn't have thought of using the Loganberry to blend with the Sweet Violet, but I think it works. It just adds a real nice depth to the purple there. And then the yellow flower, I've used Juicy Pineapple and Margarita. Now, what I tried to make sure today also is that I am not using Woodland Moss for the green. For the leaves, you'll see that I've written it just there. Also, the leaves, I've actually used Margarita and Garden Sage. So they're the colours that I'm using today, and hopefully that's a really nice reference point for you to start if you've got some of these colours and you're wondering how to blend. Now, if you don't have a mixture of these colours, you can create this layered blending with just one of the ink pads, and I have done that on other videos as well. But if you wanted to have a little blend and have a little mix and match, this is the colour scheme that I've used. So I'm going to take that away, and if I remember, I will put that back up at the end for you. So let me just have a quick look at your comments. Which colour would you like me to stencil? Pink, purple, purple. Well, of course, that would have to come from Dawn, wouldn't it? Pink and purple. Oh, it's quite even, isn't it? Okie dokie. The yellow is fresh, actually. Yeah, I just wanted to put the yellow in there as well. Right, shall we see how we go? Let's get going. If I get through it quick enough, maybe I'll do a couple of them just to show you how they really blend nicely together. So these, because this is a really small set, the A6 set, it's really nice for using up all your offcut bits of cards as well. So I don't know about you, but I do have a little so it's not so little bag, but I am quite strict with myself with the sizes that I keep. Sort of this sort of size and down to about half of this I keep because they're useful for sentiments, and this sort of thing as well. So it's a great stash buster as well, so to get rid of all your scraps. What you do have to make sure is when you're using a smaller piece of card is just check go to the stencil which has most of the outline of your detail of your design on, and just check that it fits in the smaller size piece of card. If you're using a completely A6 piece of card, then obviously you don't need to worry. But if it's something that a little bit smaller, you do just need to make sure that all the outside regions of the stencil will fit onto your scrap piece of card there, and just then use that to line up your stencil and pop it onto your Ultimate there. And then you can just reorder your stencils back into the correct order. Actually, I've just thought one thing. If you have your tacky mat, this is an ideal time to use it, because obviously I'm confident that it's not going to move on my silicone one. I've sort of got used to using that. But the tacky mat will keep that in position, because obviously this isn't anchored anywhere. Perhaps, I don't know. I've put my tacky mat away actually, but if you wanted to also, you could take this down, or you could use your magnets too. That would be, or especially with the Ultimate 2, you can put your magnetic mat on, and then you use your magnets on top of that also. But as I say, habit really. I store my Ultimate away with the silicone mat on, and yeah, that's the way that I go. Okay, so let's get stenciling, shall we? We've had enough chatting. Let's take the inks off, or the lids off my inks. Right, what colour was I going for? Pink or purple? Tell you what, I'll go with the purple, because then I can blend the Loganberry onto it, and because that's perhaps not necessarily a combination you would think of using. The Loganberry works perfectly on top of the sugar candy. It really is. Really makes it such a rich colour. Right, so I'm starting with the sweet violet there, and I'm using a small brush because that's the colour I've allocated to this colour, and I'm going to start stenciling in the centre of these flowers, because the way that these flowers work, the base of both flowers are in the centre, and that's where I want the darkest colour to be. Okay, so I'm going to concentrate the most ink in the centre where these two flowers meet here, and then use that area to work out from. Okay, so I'm going to start there, and you'll see straight away that's where the majority of the ink is going to sit. So that's where my colour for this flower is going to be the darkest. And each time I pick up new ink, I am going to start inking from this centre, and go outwards. So as I go out towards the outer petals of the flower, on both of them, it will get lighter. You don't have to do it that way, but if you need a little bit of advice on how to start, that for me works well. Or you can just do the same colour all the way across. It's entirely up to you. But I think as you get more comfortable with Lisa stencils, you start trying just that little bit more and just experimenting a little bit, and having, say, a darker area in the centre here. Once you've looked at the design, Lisa always gives us a really good clue with the colour index that she puts on the packaging. It's so handy, and even I do refer to those just to get me started. So we have that, and you can see the really nice sort of ombre effect going on there. So stencil number 2, we bring in some detail, and I'm doing exactly the same again. With the purple, I want the majority of the ink in the centre of this design, and here you can see just where those flowers start, and then work out that ink towards the outside. It doesn't look like anything is being added to these outer petals, but honestly, it actually is. And I shall show you in a second when this comes across. And say, I'm just making sure that by always starting in the centre there and working outwards, we have that real dark patch, which I think if you do no other shading on your flowers, then that gives you a really nice effect. And then once a lot of the ink has been worked off my brush, that's when I can go all across the design and make sure that all of these designs and this intricacy here is caught with the ink. So when I take that away, you can see that subtly really starting to build. And let me just lift that up for you so you can see that. It's a gorgeous colour. Now, what I will do before I finish with stencil number 2, this is when I'm going to start to introduce just that secondary colour. And I'm going to use the Loganberry, and I'm using a stencil brush. And again, just working in the centre of those flowers. And what you see that will do, it will just sort of intensify how purple that is in the centre. And the pinkness sort of disappears into the purple. But it really does just sort of bring that purple to life. And I'm just going to make sure I come into those petals here and just work that around. So although that's not necessarily going to look as pink, I suppose that's a pinky purple, isn't it, or a burgundy? It's quite an unusual colour to describe to someone. So if I take that off now, you can just see again just how that colour of the purple has been intensified. There is an element of sort of pink in there, but it blends so nicely with that purple. So stencil number 3, we're putting on extra detail. And again, I'm going to come in with a Loganberry again. You'll see through this stencil, although these are very small apertures, you'll see where the darker areas are. So you'll need to put a lot more ink through those. And these areas, more subtle areas of purple, you don't need to add quite as much. Just go over, so it's a light dusting over the less intense purple areas. But where those two flowers meet in the centre, you'll see where that purple is strongest, and that's where you want to put. Even through these smallest areas, keep that continuity going with the concentration of the ink. So I'm going to add a little bit more. I'm not going to pick up any ink. I'm just going to use what is on my brush and just go through those tiny little apertures just that little bit more, because I don't want to overpower those areas, but I know that there's plenty more ink in my brush there that will just pick those out. Pick those details out. Yes, and they have. What I'll do, I'll lift that. And can you see in these areas here, you have just those shades of pink. It's really dark and intense in the centre there. And because we've used a similar colour coming out into these highlight the other areas of the flowers, it's really, really pretty. And because you have that pink showing through there, and you'll have the pink showing through from your pink flower, that's the correlation, and that's how these two colours can really, that they coordinate together. I mean, pink and purple work together really nicely anyway, don't they? So stencil number 4, we're coming on to the leaves. So I made the conscious effort this week to not use woodland moss. So I'm coming in with Margarita, and I'm not going subtle. I'm going to layer that on so that's as bright as it can be. So really put that on, and actually this time I'm not doing any shading. I'm just making sure that these apertures are absolutely full of that wonderful zingy green colour. I'm going to add the shading to this in a second and with a different colour. So I'm just going to make sure that this is as bright as this Margarita can be. Okay, we have a little area in the centre of the flower here. Don't forget about these. I do sometimes, I must admit. So I'm going to come in with a little bit of Loganberry to start with, and then just tip the edge of that, as small as it is, but it makes all the difference. It's that attention to detail that you can have when you use small stencil brushes like this. I'm just going to tip into the edge of that, and you can see I've used probably way too much ink there, but that's okay. Just that little bit of purple. So even the smallest of apertures are going to have that nice little bit of shading in there. So before I remove this stencil, I'm going to come in and add the shading to these leaves with the garden sage. You see those colours there. So I'm going to start off putting the garden sage actually on the stencil material first, and then start pushing that into the leaves. And if you actually do this with like a paintbrush motion like this, you will actually get some texture from the brush. You almost see those brush strokes, and I think that's a really nice technique to use as well, because not only then are you adding shading, but you also add in that little bit of texture, particularly if you just flick that ink into the area like that. I mean, that may actually be really hard to show you on screen, but instead of going round and round and round, if you just use like a flicking motion, you'll be able to see it yourself. So maybe if I can bring that up, it might be really tricky actually. But there is like almost brush-like strokes going on there. But that's how we get the shading for the leaves. Garden sage works so well over Margarita. Now, stencil number 5, I'm just going to come in with the garden sage to add those details onto the leaves. Now, it doesn't matter that you've already added the garden sage, because you will have that tonal layering going on, which again I think is I love that effect when we have that. So put the detail on the leaves with the garden sage, and then I'm just going to swap brushes. This is where we actually add the detail to the stalk, and I'm going to use Margarita for the stalk, but what I will end up doing is just pulling in just a little bit of the garden sage that is sitting on the stencil anyway, and that's going to be enough just to add a slight little extra dimension to the stalk there. I don't need to worry about picking up another colour. I don't need to worry that I'm getting a little bit of garden sage on my Margarita brush either, because that will eventually just work itself out, and it's such a small amount of ink. Then you can see how that has really come together. So it's so vibrant, such a beautiful colour. Right, I can move that now because I'm going to emboss that. So you can just see how those colours there, and you can see by working into the centre and making the centre of the flowers darker, it already gives you that sense of dimension even before you emboss. So that's a really nice technique to use, and a really straightforward technique too. So I will die cut and emboss this because I will use this on the card, and I always think it's nice for you to see this work as well. I mean, we all know the quality of Lisa's dies, and we can have the confidence that this is going to die cut perfectly now, but it's still nice to see. So I'll just bring in my die cutting machine. This is a really nice simple die to line up also. It's intricate but without being too intricate, if you know what I mean. It's a nice robust die to use, if that makes sense. Where's my other plate? Okay, the one thing you might want to just make sure you do is that you line up the base of the stem there. And you can always tape that in place. There we are. Actually, you can still see that my hand's still a little bit shaky from yesterday. There we are. Run that through. It only takes the one pass, and you can see there. Isn't that pretty? I mean, that in itself, just singly onto a lovely background or onto a die cut nested shape, you really don't need much more than that. Yeah, it really does speak for itself. So now I'm going to emboss this. Now, because of the smaller nature of this as well, it's actually really easy to line up in your embossing folder. And if you are new to lining or embossing your stenciled images, the technique I have is I leave the back of the embossing folder hanging free. I don't worry about that. I don't touch it. And I just use both hands to line up the die cut underneath with the front of the embossing folder. So I don't worry about this at this stage. That just gives you the dexterity and the maneuverability inside your embossing folder just to get your image lined up perfectly, which I can do now. Once I'm happy, I can then make sure with one hand I just clamp the die cut and the front of that embossing folder together, usually on the lower half of the die cut, and then I can bring in the back of the embossing folder and then clamp all 3 layers together, and then I know that my image stays put within the folder. So if you are new to that, apologies for those who have seen me do that a couple of times before. If you are new to just lining up these folders, then that is a really nice technique just to help you out. It may take a couple of goes at it for you to get more comfortable doing that. So that's my embossed image. I'm going to move this now, I don't need that. So when we open this out, I've had some nails. Okay, there we are. And then we can see, it's so hard to show you the embossing, but it makes such a difference. It really does. You can take that off of there. It's such a beautiful image. It does remind me also of a crocus. I know we've got a crocus folder already, but when some crocuses open up really far, depending on the colours that you've used to stencil them, it sort of reminds me a little bit of that shape also. But I think it can depend on the colours that you use to stencil, doesn't it? So now I have my flowers ready. So I have the yellow, 2 purples, and actually they've come out slightly different, which I'm quite pleased about. The pink and the purple. So we are going to be a purple dominated card today, which is fine. The card size I'm using is a 5 by 7 inch, the same as I did with this one here. I've cut a layer to go on the top. It really is just millimeters or just fractionally smaller than the base card, so it's just fractionally smaller than 5 by 7 inches. And I've already die cut my aperture with the stitched ovals, but say you can use whichever aperture that you have. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if it's going to be decorated either, because the majority of the aperture is going to be hidden. The colours for the yellow flower, Katie, were the juicy pineapple and the margarita. And then I used obviously the garden sage to finish off the leaves. Maybe what I'll do a bit later on, I'll perhaps do each of the flowers individually, so you can see them come together and put them together as a quick little reel, just so as you can see them, the colours build. So perhaps I'll put these, perhaps I'll do all 3 and you have them all 3 sitting there together and you see the colours build. You also have the slide there also to show you the colours that I've used. So they're really nice. So yeah, the layer that I've cut is basically the same size as the card blank. I've cut my aperture in it. Again, you can choose your size, and I've lined it with foam tape already. Now, the idea behind this card for me, when I was thinking about it, was that I wanted to create an aperture using the flowers. So I've used to cut the aperture obviously as a guide, but the idea of having all these flowers is to hide the aperture with the flowers and create a background like I did with this one here. So what I will be doing, as much as it seems really odd to do, but I will end up cutting into the flowers that I've used. But once it's done and finished, you can see why I've done it. So the idea now is to hide the aperture using the die cut flowers and basically create background. Now to do this, I think 5 die cuts works really well for this size flower or for this size card. And I'm just going to organise these. Now I'm not worried about having the flowers upside down. What you can do, you can perhaps even go to town on this. We move them in quite a lot. You would need actually a 6th flower. Oh no, maybe you wouldn't actually. There, you can really go to town and create that aperture on the inside. And I'm just going to bring in the insert now because I think this is going to then make a lot more sense. The insert, which is basically just a piece of card, just smaller than the card blank, which we're going to sit over the top. Now I've used a vibrant green, as I say. I really did need cheering up today, so I haven't gone pastel. I've gone really bold today. So let me move that onto there, and you'll see how this comes together. And this green actually works perfectly with the Margarita. Actually, it's not far off the same colour, to be fair. Now you can see what I'm doing. I'm basically hiding the aperture with the detail of the flowers. You can hide it as much or as little as you want. You can, and we will do in a second, we'll trim into the die cuts. We can trim off some of the leaves just so as we open up the aperture a little bit more and enable us to put the sentiment on the inside. So I want to put in, what do I want to put in? I want to stamp in you. Happy birthday to you. I think that's what I'll do. So I'm going to leave those like that. I quite like that idea. And what we're going to do in a second, we're going to fill in with some of these gaps with all of the offcuts that we've got when we cut into these dies. So let me start off adding this one here. I'm just going to snip off this leaf. Okay, this is when we can start sort of just deconstructing those die cuts. And I don't think it would detract from how pretty these dies are at all. And keep these, we're going to use these. So you can see how I'm layering this. So I'm hiding that aperture underneath the flower, and I'm going to add this on now. I'm going to make sure I add the glue. Now be a bit frugal with the glue, especially if you know that you are going to overlap into the aperture there. I don't think you're going to be excuse me, able to avoid having areas where the glue is going to be exposed, but obviously we want to make sure that it doesn't stick into the aperture there, but I think it's completely workable. So I've added that like that. Now I can add this flower here, but I think also what I might do with this one, you see, you could always add the flowers this way round as well, you know, which I think I might do. Yes, I might do the flower this way round. There's going to be so many different ways of doing it, and if I can guarantee if 10 of you on here give it a go, you are all going to arrange your flowers in completely different ways. And if you make this card more than once, you're not going to arrange the flowers in the same position on each card either. I'm already doing it different to how I've done this card here. But the whole idea when you place the flower is that you really do hide this aperture cut, if you know, if you possibly can. Didn't matter so much on this one because it was all tone on tone, and it, you know, you can still see some of the oval aperture, but say it didn't matter too much on that one. Now this one I'm going to add up here, and I am going to put the flower upside down. I don't think that matters too much at all. And I'm going to keep that flower on it this time. I think basically what we're doing, I mean, Lisa has bought us apertures with florals around it already, hasn't she? But she's actually created that for us. I think all we're doing with this design for this card is just emulating that ourselves with our own die cuts. So I'm going to try and set some of these flowers in a different way. You don't want all the flowers necessarily going in the same direction. You do want a little bit of randomness, I suppose. So I'm going to put that flower there. And I did wonder actually if I should have done all the flowers the same colour, but when you see a spring garden, all the bulbs coming up, you have a whole riot of colour, don't you? So that's sort of what I was going for today. Now you can see what I've got here. I've got all the flowers sticking up over the edge. We're going to sort that out in a second. And that one you can possibly add. Yeah, do you know what? I might actually add that flower like that upside down. I don't think it matters at all. What you do, again, need to worry is about how much you are closing in the aperture. Now, if that's not an issue for you and you're going to put your sentiment somewhere else, then that really isn't anything, to worry about. You'd need to decide at what stage and where you're going to put your sentiment. That's all. I've got a nice little area there because I know now that I've got enough area to add my sentiment. And I'm just going to layer that stem underneath that leaf. There we are. That looks better to me. As I say, keep all your little pieces, because what I'm going to do now, you can either use a trimmer, whatever you're comfortable using. I'm just going to use scissors. You see, when I turn this over, that you will have areas of the leaves that have come into the aperture there that may have glue on. So just be a little bit aware of that and perhaps just wipe off any excess or just allow it to dry because you don't want that to be sort of sticking anything on the inside of your aperture there. So I'm going to take my scissors, that's where my large scissors come into play, and I'm going to trim those flowers just to the size of the layer there. Now, turning this round and not seeing the colour might make it a little bit easier for you to snip into the flowers, but honestly, it'll be worth it in the end. Alternatively, what you could do, you could be doing this on a square piece, and then instead of on like a 5x5 square piece of card, so instead of trimming off these bits, you could then mount that whole layer onto an 8x8 card. So you could then have the flowers going off, you creating the aperture and then going off and filling the space on a larger square card. So that might be an idea also. That's just me thinking out loud at the moment, to be fair. Okay, so what I've done, I'm going to make sure I keep all of these pieces because we've still got some lovely stenciling going on there. We don't want to waste. We don't want to waste that if we can't, if we can help it. So I'm going to turn that back over. Oh, I've missed that bit there. Okay. And can you see now how this is coming together? Although it may seem hard to snip your flowers in half, once they've actually made that layer, it changes the look completely, doesn't it? Right, I prefer that way around. Now, what you can do, we have gaps here to fill. Why not use what we've already just snipped off? So I'm going to trim this. I'm going to trim that bit of the stalk away, and I'm going to find a place where I can sit that. And I think that might work just to fill that corner gap there. So I'm going to add that. There's no point having lots of white space. I want this to be as busy as possible, which again is quite unusual for me when I make a card. So I'm just going to turn that round. I'm going to line up the straight cut that I made with the straight cut on the layer, like so. And I will snip that bit off again. And we're just going to work our way round and fill those gaps. We can use some of these leaves. Actually, I might use, I'm going to take that leaf off. And I'm going to add that little bit of pink down there. Now, what this does do, it does mean you start spreading the colours around. So then this is where sort of the randomness starts happening. And eventually when you finished, it will look like everything was part of a bigger pattern. So I'm going to add that there. And I shall snip that off. Okay. And I don't have any yellow actually. Could we do? Actually, yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to line up the straight cut that I've made on that yellow piece. I'm going to add it there. It's only a tiny little amount, but I tell you what, that will just make the difference. So I'm going to snip that off. I'm going to add that to there. I might just snip off the stem. And make sure that that's stuck. Turn that over. And snip that off. And we have that tiny little bit of yellow up there. Okay. How pretty is that coming together? Eh? I really like it. I think it's worked out really well. And then you can use some of these leaves and just fill in the gaps where you can, so we don't have too much white space going on. So I'll just add a leaf there. Then just trim that away also. So depending on how you arrange your flowers to start with, it depends on how much you can carry on and add. And we don't actually have too much of our flowers left here, look. So although we've used them in a slightly unconventional way, we have used most of what we stenciled. So let's move those. And now we can think about adding our sentiment to the centre there. Now you can add absolutely anything you want to this, really, can't you? So I am just going to take the stamps out and just place them where I'm happy with them to start with. So I'm going to do happy birthday to you. You could have especially for you, just for you, thinking of you, a gift for you from this set alone. So let's see. Let's centre that. That can be moved down a little bit. My finger's really sticky now from that glue. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that's straight. And that is centred. I'm going to have that there, so I can bring that down there a little bit, I think. Okay, I'm happy with that. So I'm going to take away my aperture. Now, you can use a stamping platform for this. But I'm just going to go with my block, and I'm just going to make a little mark just there so I know where I can replace my stamping block there. So I can take that away and I can ink this up. Now I'm using VersaFine. You can obviously use Lisa's black ink also. I keep forgetting to order myself a re-inker, I must admit. So now I can stamp this straight onto here. I like using black. You can't go wrong with black stamp. But bear with me, bring my head in. Okay, so I'm just going to put that straight down to there. Give that a good press. Now you want to be firm when you press. You don't want to press too much because it will distort the clarity of the stamp, but you do need to just be firm with it and just give a little bit of time for that ink to transfer from the stamp onto the cardstock. And I truly believe that that really does make a difference. Just give it that little bit of time. So when I take that away, we have a perfect impression there. And now we can simply just frame that. And how stunning does that look? So I will take off the backing from my phone. Oh, this is, there we are. And that one there too. So can just line that up. Now, the easiest way to do this is to make sure that this layer that you're putting your aperture onto is slightly smaller, because then it does give you a little bit of opportunity just to line that up, like so. And then we can add that straight onto the front of our card. There we are. So we have a really dimensional card going on there. It's really bright, really happy card. And I think that's something that you could easily find on the shelves of a card shop as well, to be honest. I'm really happy with the way that that's turned out. And doesn't it look completely different to that, but made in exactly the same way? And I think they both have their place. This makes a gorgeous, subtle card. It'd be ideal for a sentiment card as well, maybe. And this, it would just pick you up, wouldn't it? I mean, this really made me smile and really made me happy today. So that is just a great antidote to the grey weather that's outside at the moment. So, oh, hi, Tina. I didn't see you sneak in there. Lovely to have you here as well. Yes, you could make it into a shaker card as well, actually. That would look lovely, Elaine. It really would. Yes, the sentiments were fabulous, and you'll get so much use out of those sentiments, Katie. I think I'll be using those sentiments on most of my cards sort of going forward now. The scissors that I used were, the large ones were the Tim Holtz ones, and I think these ones are X-Cut ones. I've had them for years. I get quite attached to my scissors, and they're under lock and key. Nobody's allowed to use them. And I only use them for paper. I make sure they're used for certain things. So yeah, there's lots of you staying there. You forgot to go on YouTube, Beverly. Oh, not to worry. It'll be sitting there on YouTube too. Popping too much ink on my brushes. When you do that, Katie, if you put too much ink on your brushes, that's what I always say, because I can do it too. It's easy done, especially with some of these bolder colours. If you pop too much ink on, you can either take it off in the lid of the thing, or you can just add it onto your stencil, onto a different area of your stencil. If you pick up way too much, put it on your stencil, and then go back and dip into it like a palette. That is the way to do it, because then you're just picking up small amounts. And it's always a good technique, whichever colour you use, actually. And it depends. Also, it's a good technique to do regardless of the age of your ink pad, because obviously newer ink pads are far more juicy and it's so much easier to pick up too much ink. But if you always blot off your ink first onto your stencil, you can always pick it up and then reuse it. If you can blot it off onto paper as well, copy paper that you have sitting next to you, but it's less easy to pick up and use. But you can always pick up more, sort of dab into it and then go into another area. So that's always a really nice thing to use. And these stencils wipe and clean up perfectly. All you need to do is the way that I do it, actually, I always spray it with water. Now, you could use this and you can make your inky techniques and whatever. Sometimes I just don't have the time for that. You can just wipe it away, use a microfiber cloth, and you can see this one has been well used. Probably time for a new one. And you can see just how, even with a bold colour like that purple, you can clean them up to be just like new again. So yeah, it's just practice and technique. But say, don't worry about picking up too much ink. And some people are going to be using more ink than others. I generally stencil a lot lighter, so this is quite bold for me. So pink and purple was your wedding colour theme. Oh, that's pretty. That'd be lovely. Okay, so thanks for joining me today. I'm glad a lot of you made it to see me on a on a Wednesday. It's an unusual day, and say apologies if you went for me yesterday. Can I ask? Oh, the green card. Do you know what? I don't know, to be honest. That's just something that I've had sitting there for a very long time. But I think actually that the green that was in Lisa's textured cardstock was pretty much the same shade, but I chose this because it was a smooth cardstock, not textured, because then I could stamp straight onto it, you see. So you could use a textured cardstock on the inside, which would look lovely also. Actually, you could also add your flowers onto a textured card. So you could have textured cardstock in between your die cuts here as well, and that would look lovely too. That would add a different dimension as well, wouldn't it? Yeah. Okay, so I'll leave that there for you today. Thanks so much again for joining me today. Now, remember, it's dawn tomorrow, Thursday, and we'll have Lisa again on Friday night. God, it's come around so quick this week, hasn't it? Enjoy the shows tomorrow. Hopefully, Lisa will get to do some more demos for you as well, so you can see both new collections in action. And enjoy the rest of your week, everyone. Take care.